Good afternoon. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Gregorian, President and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. Welcome to today's exciting meeting. We continue to make DEC history. This is our first ever event at LCA. Isn't it gorgeous? Quick note of thanks to DEC board member Arn Tellem from the Pistons, Chris McGowan from Illich Sports and Entertainment for making today possible. Especially want to welcome our DEC members. If you're not a DEC member yet, just give me 10 seconds to myth bust. There's no nomination or application process for becoming a member. There's no job level, no salary requirement. We're just looking for people that want to build their networks with some really cool people and hear from thought leaders on our stage like you will today. I would ask you one favor, just silence your cell phones so we don't disturb today's program. If you've been with us before, you know we always begin by honoring our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd just ask you to stand, and the flag is to my right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. If you've been with us before, you know we love having high school and college students with us. After thinking it through and knowing we were going to all share in some adult beverages after the program, we didn't think that was the greatest mix. So we'll just see the high school and college students at our next event. Couple things on your table. One is our season lineup. After today's meeting, we've got a very busy month of November coming up with a couple programs I want you to know about. November 2nd, it's a professional development seminar at Lawrence Tech University. The topic is leadership. Stop trying to get the most from your team and get the most for your team. Practical tips for today's leaders. It's a breakfast meeting. We think you're going to enjoy that. November 17th, the CEO of Hyatt and the Vice Chairman of PwC will be with us. They employ thousands of people, and the topic will be the future of work and specifically talent, which is on everybody's mind right now. November 30th, Federal Reserve Board Governor Dr. Lisa Cook, who's also an MSU econ professor, will be with us to give us the Fed's update on the economy. Hopefully she brings good news too. So plenty more in November and December. We hope you can be with us when your schedule permits. Also on your table, check out our sponsors. We would not be here without their generosity. They're the reason we can bring you today's programs and more programs in the future. So thank you to our sponsors. And of course, thank you, George. Thank you. Of course, the DEC has an incredible history of speakers that tell the history of our country. And so Mr. Casey and Mr. Weaver, October 27th, I want you to know, is a very popular and interesting date in the DEC's 88-year history. You both are joining a distinguished list of 18 others who were at our stage on this day, October 27th. A few quick highlights. Beginning way back in 1941, note the year, think of what was going on, we hosted Captain Seymour Tuck, a Royal Navy captain and professional cricket player, and his speech was titled War at Sea. We've also hosted CEOs from U.S. Steel, Pixar, the Cleveland Clinic, as well as Katharine Graham from the Washington Post, Carly Fiorina from HP, and then some of you may have been with us who could forget in 2016, just 6 years ago on this date, we hosted the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak on this date. And man, oh man, did the you-know-what hit the fan just a couple days after he was here. So you may remember that incident. So today we're pleased to add you guys, Dwane and Troy, as our 19th speakers on this day in DEC history. So congratulations. Thanks for being with us. Quickly, 2 ways for you to be involved in today's program. Take some photos, share them on your social media, #EconClub. And at the end of this, I'm going to come back and we're going to get your audience questions for these gentlemen. And you can do that using your smartphone. Instructions are on your table. You can scan that code and give us a question. So, all right, time to get on with the party here with some introductions. Let's start with Coach Casey. Dwane Casey is the head coach of our Detroit Pistons. He joined the team in 2018. Before arriving here in Detroit, he has head coaching experience in the NBA with the Toronto Raptors and Minnesota Timberwolves. He spent time before those head coaching jobs as an assistant with the Dallas Mavericks and Seattle Supersonics. Dwane, I learned, was captain of the 1978 NCAA national champion Big Blue Nation Kentucky Wildcats. So let's say hello to Coach Casey. We're also going to bring up in a moment Troy Weaver. He's the general manager of the Detroit Pistons, and he joined the team in 2020. He worked his way up the NBA ladder with various positions with the Utah Jazz and OKC Thunder. Before beginning his NBA career, he spent a number of years in the collegiate ranks as an assistant coach, University of Pittsburgh, University of New Mexico, and Syracuse University. And in 2003, he was an assistant at Syracuse when they also won an NCAA championship. So please welcome Troy Weaver. And our moderator is certainly a familiar face to all, and that face belongs to Mr. Greg Kelser. He is a Detroit native. He's an important member of the Michigan State 1979 National Championship basketball team. Do you detect a pattern here? These guys are winners. He played 6 seasons in the NBA with the Pistons, Supersonics, Clippers, Indiana Pacers. You can see him on TV these days as a Pistons analyst for Bally's Detroit. Please welcome Coach Casey, GM Weaver, and Greg Kelser to the stage. Oh, this way.
You know, there's some symmetry here as I sit between these two guys. Troy won his national championship at Syracuse 2003, and that year they played my alma mater, Michigan State, in East Lansing and handed it to us. So, I mean, we're cool now, but I didn't like that at all. Boy, Carmelo Anthony had a great game, and of course, Coach Casey here was mentioned that, you know, he won championship in Kentucky in 1978. That was supposed to be our championship. They beat us in the regional final in Dayton, Ohio, advanced to the Final Four, and just stalled our march by 1 year. But, you know, I couldn't be between two greater guys. I really have a lot of respect for both. What I'd like to do is talk about what's happening right now with the Pistons and where we've come from to arrive here today and where hopefully we might be going. And I'll start with Troy as the architect of this team and these young players that you all have had a chance to watch, and some have been growing and developing over the last 3 seasons and others a little more recently. But I think that we can all share the same enthusiasm when we say that we feel like we're on the right track. One of the things I've learned about the NBA, it is hard to win. It's not an overnight thing. It's not like in football when a team like the Cincinnati Bengals can get the first pick in the draft and then 3 years later be in the Super Bowl. It doesn't happen like that in basketball. There's a process, and because it's on a public stage, it's one that comes with a whole lot of scrutiny. But I feel very confident that the folks around here, knowledgeable basketball fans, do understand that process and the patience that's required. So having said all that, Troy, where are we?
We're going into, we started year 3 of the restoration, and I know you've heard me say many times, we're calling this a restoring. Some people call it a rebuild, some people call it a reboot, et cetera. It's restoring because there's been greatness here in Detroit, in the city and with the Pistons. And some people come in and they want to reinvent the wheel. That's not me. It's been greatness here. 2 iterations of great teams, the bad boys and going to work teams, and they had common themes. Blue collar mentality. They played defense. They played together. They were selfless, and out of that, greatness emerged individually, and we want to follow suit. And that's what we're trying to do here. Draft, trade, acquire through free agency, players who fit that. Coach has a great track record of his teams playing defense and playing selfless and developing young players. And we've seen that. We've seen three of our last couple draft picks make all rookie. And we're on the track for that again. But it's a process. We're not going to shortcut it. We're going to let it happen organically because it's built to last that way. So we're not going to shortcut things and try to get a quick fix because when we want to arrive, we want to stay there. And Coach and On and everybody in the building understands where we are. And Coach and I laugh. We have a little inside joke that in the morning we drink a cup of urgency, and at night we drink a cup of patience. And if we keep doing that, we'll stay where we need to be and get this thing back to the level that you guys and the Piston community are accustomed to.
Coach Casey, who, by the way, won an NBA championship when he was an assistant coach with Rick Carlisle, 2011 with the Dallas Mavericks, and then in 2018 with the Toronto Raptors was the NBA Coach of the Year. We know the success you've had mentoring, developing young talent. You had a lot of it in Toronto, and that young talent helped Toronto get to 59 wins, I believe, one season. So your track record is solid in that regard. Can you contrast what you had in Toronto, the responsibility of bringing these young players and developing them, helping them gain confidence to where they could become solid and consistent contributors? Can you contrast what you had there versus what you have now?
It's very similar, Greg. It's similar trajectory going up. I think the first year there we were like won 26 games or something like that, and then every year we got better. But it is patience, and I know our league is not one of patience. And as Troy said, we want to have a healthy amount of patience, but yet and still have a healthy amount of urgency, because that's what you deserve as fans. That's what we're about. But it is about patience. And one night you may see a player, do something spectacular, and next night he'll do something that, where did that come from? So you got to mentor that and teach that and work with that between each one of them. But Troy's done an excellent job of bringing in not only good players, talented players, but great people. And that helps as far as coaching and growing and developing in the program that we're trying to build here. One thing about it, like you said, Greg, it doesn't happen overnight. But I see the growth from game to game. It may not come out as a W or a win, but as far as the growth with different players each night, you see something that they've grown from, that they've learned from their last game. And that's what this year is about. We want to take a step forward. But again, by doing that, we can't skip steps. We can't say, okay, forget about this kid. Why is he playing this guy? Well, guess what? It's only 4 games in the season, so we've got to let that young man grow through his mistakes. And like I told the team, nobody celebrates pouring concrete. Nobody. When they built this building here, nobody was celebrating, oh yeah, they're pouring concrete for LCA. But once it was built, everybody was excited. The media was here, cameras were here, and right now we're pouring concrete. And that's what I told the team last night. And even though we didn't win last night, I thought our performance, our intensity, our focus We had a few, lapses, but for the most part, we had an excellent game as far as growth and intensity, but wasn't rewarded with the win. But we're pouring concrete.
Troy, take us through what is required of your responsibilities, the eye for talent that you have to have, those various nuances that maybe many of us might not see. You have to be keen on that. I know as a part of the Thunder organization at one time, you guys drafted Westbrook and Harden and Durant, and they all went on to become most valuable players. Did you see that? How do you go about determining who's got it and who's really got it?
Well, God easily determines that. But we try to stay true. For me, and we talk about this ad nauseum, that we try to stay true to the DNA. And that's why I always say we draft people, not players. So we try to make sure we get the right person that's built on the right things: competitive spirit, hardworking, selfless guys. Obviously, they have to have some talent. But if you can find a young man that's talented, that has those things, then he can exceed where he is. Most of the time, in any walk of life, your talent can take you somewhere, but your character and your work ethic and all those work habits allow you to stay there and exceed. Sports is no different. We all have been around people who had exceptional talent, but it's the work ethic, the DNA, selflessness, that put team first, that allows them to become who they need to become. We all have stories about special players. The one thing, we drafted Jay Nabi this year, and this guy's a complete gym rat. He works his tail off. He's always in the building early. Coach has to keep him out of the building. But when you see a young man with talent and has that kind of work ethic, it just bodes well for him becoming a player that he wants to become, and he'll max out who he is. Jalen Duren was the youngest player in the draft. He's still 18, and he doesn't have a clue what he's doing, but his natural talent is taking over. But the coaching staff is steadying the ship with those guys, and it's going to be rough water some nights, and some nights they're going to swim in the deep end. But those are two tremendous young men who have competitive spirits. You can see it in their eyes. You can see the way they play the game. And so we definitely are excited about them and what they bring to the table.
Coach, let's talk about some of your players individually. I'll start with Cade Cunningham, last year's got the third highest most votes for the Rookie of the Year. Many of us around here thought maybe he should have won it, but he was a true find. I want to talk about him, and then I want to talk about the two picks that Troy just talked about, Jalen Duren and Jay Nivey, the guys that you are responsible for growing.
Well, first of all, Cade, he should have won, I felt like, Rookie of the Year last year. He got off to a slow start, and I thought that kind of slowed him down to around about December, January, kind of got his sea legs where he's shooting the ball. But Cade has that, what do you call it, it factor. He has that natural leadership ability he doesn't know he has. Guys will follow him. He has a great feel for the game, his DNA of a feel for the game, knowing when to take over, when to apply himself. So all those natural things that you can't give a player, he has it. And offensively, he's finding his way as far as his three-point shooting concerned, his pick and roll game. He's finding people now. Defensively, he's been beginning to use his length. And last night he got switched off on Trae Young and did a good job of keeping him in front, using his size and length. So all those things, still, people forget that he's a second-year guy also. Even with all that talent, he's still a second-year guy, and there's some things that he's seeing for the first time, different coverages, different how teams are playing him. But I think he's responding with flying colors. I thought last night he kind of went back to the old K, to being assertive, in putting his imprint on the game as far as attacking the rim, attacking the paint, finding people. Got to cut down on his turnovers, but yet and still, I thought last night was one of the first glimpses of who Cade was at the end of last year. Jaden Ivey, Troy said it, he's a gym rat. He loves the game. He loves this city. And to me, that's worth his weight in gold. I mean, the young man cried when he was drafted to come to Detroit. And his grandmother is part of the community. His grandfather was a part of the community. So that right there in itself is driving this young man to be a special player. His speed is something that is unusual, is different, I want to say. And so he's learning by, possession by possession, defensively and offensively. And Jalen Duren, the young man, I've said this many times, he reminds me of a young Shawn Kemp, who I had in Seattle. Raw, quick learner, excellent basketball IQ. I asked him the other day, I said, we was going through a play, I said, Duren, what's this play called? He said, I don't know the name of it, but I know I'm supposed to be right here at the elbow and whenever the ball comes across. So he's on it, he's in tune with what's going on, he listens, he's coachable. So the sky is going to be the limit for both those young men. And what they do is translating into the NBA. And they're learning as they go. And like I said, the sky is going to be the limit for both those young men.
I want to ask both of you, Coach, first you in a philosophical way, coaching-wise. One of the questions that was asked of you before we came up here was the switch over from intense, aggressive, bone-crushing defense in games in the 70s to what we see now, an emphasis on three-point shooting, getting up as many shots as possible. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't look like very much defense has been played, but you maintain that defense is still a big part of it. Talk about the evolution of the game in that regard.
Well, you mentioned being in Toronto. We had a top 5 defense there when we were there a couple of years. And in Detroit, Dallas, we had a top defense there also. But as those years went on, the game has changed. So the game is evolving. There's more switching being done today than ever before. Just one is because you got to get adjusted to not really bumping people, touching people. There's a way you have to do it, be strategic with it as far as using your body, your hands, and that's probably the most difficult for young guys to learn. But defense is huge today. It's different. You got to be more, it's more, I would say, strategic and scheming more so than just individual, just beating the heck out of somebody as we used to do in the early 90s and that type of thing. But defense is still defense. You got the ball, you in the basket. That's very important. And once you get back in transition, that's huge. But it's more switching, more, double switching. All those schematic things are in play today. But it still comes back to keeping that ball in front of you, guarding one-on-one as far as philosophical defensively. And again, as a young team, I know we're teaching it every day. We're working on it, and in some instances probably doesn't look like it, but I promise you we're teaching it, working on it, and emphasizing it every day. And the thing that has changed today is a three-point shot. And I've seen it evolve over the last 15 years. The defense, you win with defense, but also, too, you got to keep the scoreboard moving. You got to keep the scoreboard moving because as great as a lot of times we had guys bottled up last night, DeJounte Murray vaults up and knocks down a shot over a guy's hand. So now you got to go down to the other end and keep the scoreboard moving. Continue to work on your defense. Continue to try to get stops. But it's a different game that has evolved over the last 15, 20 years.
With that said, Troy, you're the man upstairs. I want to try to get your impression of, and this is a two-part question for you, the diminishing of the big guy, the man in the post that we see today. Will we ever get back to a day where everybody wants a big guy that can score in tight, shoot a high percentage, and all that stuff? I'm talking about Kareem, and I'm talking about Shaq, and Elijah Wan, on and on and on. And then I'd like to get your feel on just where the game is today, the NBA as a league.
I love big guys, so people make jokes about it. They can keep making jokes about it. I think the game starts after the shot goes up. You got to get it off the glass. If I'm not mistaken, the last Jokic's been the MVP the last couple of years. It was like him and Embiid 1 and 2. So I think the league kind of takes shape of the best players. You know, when Shaq was dominant, you had 2 or 3 7-footers on the bench just trying to, you know, get in his way and foul him. Then when three-point shot got going, you know, that kind of diminished the big guy. But I still believe in it's a big man's game. I don't think that's going to change as long as the basket is 10 feet. The better big players you are, I think the better team you're going to have. I think that we have some young big guys that I think that are growing, but I would take Jokic and Embiid on my team any day. I think they're some of the best players in the league. Where the game is going and where it is right now, it hadn't been this competitive in a long while. Every night you got to tee it up, and that's influx of the global game. So many good players, not only in the States, but all over the world. I mean, you could argue that 10 of the best international players probably could be 10 of the best U.S. players right now. I mean, Jokic and Giannis, Embiid, they would all be on the international team. So I think the game is in good hands. We got some really good young players coming up. You still got a lot of dominant players that are just entering their prime. But I still believe that, you know, defense wins. Golden State and Boston were 1 and 2 in defense last year. I don't know if the steak dinner man is in here, but I got you.
I think he's holding you to that, too.
Yeah.
Pre-game meal.
Yeah. But if you look at the championship level teams, they play defense. Now you have to score, absolutely. Milwaukee, when they won it, they were top 3 defense. The Lakers in the bubble. So you have to defend and move the scoreboard, like Coach said, and just finding that mix. I don't think there's not a team that's top 5 in offense and the bottom of the league of defense. That team usually isn't very good. But if you find a team that's top 5 in defense and offense isn't good, they're still a pretty good team. So I'm gonna stay on the defensive side, and you know, I'm gonna rest over there, and we'll get there. We got a young team, and it takes a while to develop that, and Coach is doing a tremendous job with getting those guys to develop those habits. But I think the league is in great shape.
All right, well, we got 2 minutes to go, and I'm going to finish this off with a fun question, if you will. Dwane, I'll give you a chance to think about it because Troy, I know his already. He knows mine. We talked about it on the road trip just recently. And we're going to ask each of you for your own personal top 5 players in NBA history. Your 5. Okay? You think about it. Go ahead.
Well, it depends on your age. So I'm 54. So at center is Kareem, who to me is the best player of all time. Power forward is Tim Duncan. Small forward is Larry Bird. Shooting guard is Michael Jordan. Point guard is Magic Johnson.
All right. And I'll give mine, because mine is regardless of position. And Troy here is 54. I'm 54 plus some. All right? But my 5 would be Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, and Irvin Magic Johnson. That's my 5. Coach?
Well, I got to go with Troy with Larry Bird. I mean, saw him toward the end. Coach seeing him toward. He was unbelievable as far as a guard is concerned. Michael Jordan. It's hard to go against Bill Russell if you're not going by position just because of the number of championships, if that's how you're measuring guys. After that, you got to go with, everybody's against LeBron. I think LeBron is going to be, the history is going to be good to him as far as him winning. After that, I got one more. Jabbar, Kareem Jabbar.
There you go. All right. Hey, folks, we hope to see you a lot during the season. You know what's happening here, and it's promising. We really appreciate your support, and we ask that you continue it. And like I always like to say on television, when the game is really getting good, call somebody. Let them know.
Thank you, guys. One more round of applause.
Thank you, thank you.
Nice job, Greg. Thank you. Now we've got some questions from the audience that I've got a privilege to read. We're going to start with a question for Coach Casey. The pro teams in Detroit are all really young, and we keep hearing the same thing from management. We have to learn how to win. So, does this apply to the Pistons? And if so, how do you teach young players to win in the NBA?
No question. That's a good question. One is it's hard to teach it. They have to kind of go through it. That's the unfortunate thing about young teams. No matter how much potential you have and how much talent you have, until you get out there between those lines at 7 o'clock, officials, big crowd, and then respond in that setting, that's the best teaching point that you can have. And then between time, there's a lot of teaching goes on in the court, video, film. Our coaching staff works diligently with guys individually, with film, on the court, individual work. So it's the back and forth between going through it in the fire and then also the behind-the-scenes work on a daily basis, and it doesn't stop. So that would be my experience. Going through it is painful, but at the end of the rainbow, as I've experienced, and I'm sure Troy has too, going from here to there, there's nothing better. There's not a better feeling. And there's no shortcuts. There's no magic wand to say, hey, why can't you do this? No, it's a huge cup of patience and a sense of urgency each and every day.
Thank you. Over to Troy. There's a lot of business folks in the room who typically will set a goal at the beginning of their year, or goals, I should say, at the beginning of the year. You're at the beginning of your season. What are the goals that you have set for the Pistons this season?
We say it from the outset, we want to be competitive every night. Making sure that the guys come ready and coach and the staff gets these guys ready to play. But no, we want to be competitive. we thought, we were hoping that the strength of our team was going to be our depth, and we were still working our way through that, trying to get a couple of our key players back healthy. But know the goals be competitive and continue to grow in our restoration.
Good. For either of you or both, somebody in the audience asked your thoughts on the current playoff format and the play-in tournament that we saw last spring.
I like it. I think it gives everybody an opportunity to get into the playoffs. I'm on the competition committee, and we talked about having the European format as far as a tournament throughout the year. That's kind of been talked about and bantered about. But I like the format that we have now. It gives you an opportunity for that 9th and 10th team that is restoring whatever, trying to get there, to get an opportunity to get in. So I do like it.
Troy, anything further to add?
Oh, he's on the competition committee. I'm sticking with Coach.
Somebody asked in the audience, somebody asked about how do you balance, we'll go to Coach Casey on this, balancing load management with players, fans who buy tickets to see certain players. That's a tough thing to do, but how do you approach that?
Troy, you want to take that, or you want me? I'm not a fan of load
you're
management.
Throwing all the tough ones over
I'm not
to
a
you.
fan. I agree with the fans. If you're paying hard-earned money, I understand the frustration of fans, of guys just taking games off. Now, with that said, with all the science and technology and the medical approach for the longevity of each individual players, I understand it, because it is a load, but it's also a load for fans to pay their hard-earned money to come to a game to see Michael Jordan play, and all at once he's sitting over there in his jeans and for rest. Now, injuries is a difference between resting and a guy being injured. And for me, that's the difference from a personal standpoint, my philosophical approach. People give me a hard time because I believe in that. So it's two sides of the story, but I'm erring on the side of there's a difference between being injured and being sore, or being a little bit sore, or just sitting out because you don't feel like going. And I err on the side of the fans with that one.
Somebody asked, I noticed that the Pistons are playing the Hawks back-to-back at home. You're going to Milwaukee, I think, next week, back-to-back road games against the same team. I think that's new in the NBA this year. What are your thoughts? Why are they doing that, and how do you feel about it?
They started doing it in COVID to cut down on travel.
Okay.
I know the fans probably don't like it as much. We played the Hawks last night. We play them tomorrow. They might I don't need to see them twice. I'll see them Friday. But from a basketball standpoint, I kind of like it. It's kind of like the playoffs. And from a travel standpoint, I like staying in the city like baseball does. So for me, I'm fine with it. I know the fans rather see a different opponent. But I think with a young team like us, you can make the adjustments. The coaches can make the adjustments from game to game with the same opponent, just like the playoffs. So I think it kind of sets you up for having some of the experience preparing for the same team.
Good. We've got a fashionista in the audience, and they said, you guys, your coaching staff is the best dressed coaching staff in the NBA. How do you select what you're going to wear that night?
That's a great question. Our equipment manager, Kong, he does a great job of putting out the schedule. And all that, too, is something that goes back and forth with the league and also the coaches. It's between being casual, which came about because of COVID. I'm an old school suits guy from that standpoint, but I understand the casual look. It's comfortable, but I think, too, we represent the city of Detroit. We represent the organization, and the more you can look pretty to nice. I like my suit game, so to speak, so as players talk about. But again, I understand it. but I think we have another year of being casual, another couple of years of being casual, and I think they'll revisit that. But one thing that helps our staff, we have a lot of former players. We have Richard Lewis and Keith Bogans as former players, and some guys that are still in great shape, and so that helps them look good in their outfits.
Final question before we get to the lightning round. Somebody in the audience says, I'm a huge college basketball fan. I wondered if you could comment on your thoughts on name, image, likeness. Greg, you may have some thoughts on this as well.
Well, I thought way back in the 70s and late 70s when I was in school that athletes get paid. I wish they'd had that name, image, likeness around back then. You got some guys right now, though, that'll make more money in college than they'll make playing professional sports. It's kind of just how it goes. I don't know if this is the true answer. I don't know if this is the real solution, but I'm not going to stand in the way of young players because they are the product. They're the selling point. That's what people are coming out to see, tuning in to see. They're the ones that make it roll. So I am never going to begrudge them an opportunity to capitalize on their abilities.
Coach or Troy, any comments?
You got to deal with it. It's here to stay. These kids, I mean, they fought hard for this for a long time. And a lot of people say it's unjust, it's unfair, it's not right, etc. But there's a lot of things that doesn't fit society at the moment, but it's here to stay. And, you have to adapt and be better for it. I'm kind of happy these players are finally being able to put some money in their pocket. I mean, being a former college coach, I never forget recruiting a young man from New York. He lived in a 2-bedroom, apartment with 9 people. And he came to Syracuse and he'd outgrown his coat. And, Syracuse, I mean, all we do is have snow up there. And the guy, he didn't have money to get a winter coat. And if I would have bought it, it would have been a violation. That's pathetic. So I'm glad that now it's reciprocity. These people now are getting paid for the people that didn't get paid. So I believe in a human being, and I bought the coat.
I was waiting for that part. I agree. And another thing it does, it helps the kids that are really not ready, whether it's football or whatever the sport is, to go to the next level. It helps them get their education, provide whatever it is for their families or whoever that they really normally leave to come to this league to do to help their family, like Troy was saying. So it gives them another avenue. The schools, I was at the University of Kentucky, made lots of money, like Michigan State and Syracuse, with naming rights to the arena, advertising, marketing, and the kids are the product. They're the talent. And so it's only right that they get rewarded or reimbursed for the talent along with the education, But again, I think the big thing, it keeps them in school one more year, maybe 2 more years, that they can grow and develop even better as a professional player.
All right, DEC tradition, we finish up really quickly. It's our last exercise. It's a lightning round. This includes you, Greg, as well. So we're going to start down at the end with Troy Weaver. Something on your bucket list. Something on your bucket list.
Bring the Pistons' 4th championship.
All right.
I think I'd still like to travel to the African continent.
Good. Coach?
I'm a baseball fan. I like to go to Cub Stadium. Wrigley Field, I've never been. That's one stadium I've always dreamed as a little kid, listening to the radio of Cardinals and Cubs, and dreamed about that. So before I go 6 feet under, I want to make sure I go to Wrigley Field and win a championship here with Detroit.
Good. All right, back to you, Coach. Person other than a family member that you would like to have lunch with.
Dead or alive?
Sure.
Okay. I would like to, with Martin Luther King.
Greg.
You stole mine.
Well, he's got a nice contract. He can invite you to lunch with Martin Luther King as well.
Yeah, that's a very good one. But you know what? I'll try and maybe even keep it in the sports realm. I'd like to have lunch with Jackie Robinson.
Love it. Troy.
Muhammad Ali.
Good.
I had lunch
Staying
with
with
him.
you. Staying with you, Troy. Favorite team growing up? Any sport?
It's the easy one. Washington Redskins.
Greg.
Easy, Boston Celtics. I was a Russell fan.
Okay.
Easy for me, St. Louis Cardinals.
Coach, your very first paying job. Very first paying job.
Working in Allen coal mines in Kentucky. It was my first underground paying job.
No, thank you. Greg.
I washed cars when I was 10 years old.
Beautiful.
$2 a car.
Shoveling snow.
I don't. Those jobs are have to.
Yeah, a couple of my friends, we went around the neighborhood and we would shovel people's snow. And the old lady, so we got paid. I mean, first paying job, right?
First paying job, yeah?
Yeah, we got paid for that.
Mine was paying. I was washing other people's cars, not my own family's.
All right, Troy, you get to pick any musician or a band, a private concert in the backyard, your backyard, for family and friends. Who is it?
Can I have Bill Withers bring out Earth, Wind, and Fire?
Greg.
Ray Charles.
He stole yours, didn't he, Coach?
No. Aretha. I
right.
have to go with Aretha.
Good.
In my backyard, all night.
Coach Casey, describe Detroit, one word. Detroit in one word.
Grit.
Love it.
Heart.
Toughness.
All right, final question. You ready? Advice, and you can take a little bit more time on this. Advice to your 25-year-old self. Coach, advice to your 25-year-old self.
Treat people the way you want to be treated. Because the world, you never know when you see that person again. There's so many things I've done in my life that person I met at 25, or I might have been short with or given time to when I was 45, when I was 50, that person was one of the most important people in my life, away from my family. So many times you meet so many people in business, in life, that you never know how you can help them, how you may say hello to them. It may make their days. It may have been alone all day long, and that one hello could change their life. And so treat people the way you want to be treated, and because, again, you may have to go back across that bridge at some point.
Greg.
I think mine might emanate from where we are as a country right now. So I would probably say, know the difference between right and wrong and lead from that point of perspective.
Troy, you get the final word.